Shalom, everyone. We're waiting for more people to get in, so we'll start momentarily. Okay, shalom and shalom again, everybody. My name is Ilona Ben Moshe. I'm a senior lecturer at the Skirball Department of Hebrew and Judaic Studies at NYU. I would like to welcome you on behalf of my department, the Office of Cultural Affairs at the Consulate General of Israel, and the Taub Center for Israel Studies at NYU. Thanks to the extensive use of video platforms this year, we are able to have you, our diverse audience from 3 continents, watch the films in this series and join the talks. Thank you for being here. Before I begin, I would like to thank again Daniel Zuz, the Director of Film and Media in North America, the Office of Cultural Affairs at the Consulate General of Israel, for his excellent collaboration in setting up this series. I would like to thank Kirsten House, Special Project Administrator at the Skirball Department of Hebrew and Judaic Studies, for her instrumental assistance in the production of this event. I would also like to thank the Taub Center for Israel Studies at NYU for their generous sponsorship. Last but not least, a big thank you to my colleagues, Professor Alex Jason, Chair of Hebrew and Judaic Studies Department, Professor Rosalie Kamelhar, Director of the Hebrew Program, and Professor Benny Hari, the Director of NYU Tel Aviv, for their enthusiasm and support. It is a great pleasure again to host the Israeli film series that highlights feature films by young Israeli directors who has already won praise and prizes. The films that we have shown over the past months were all made in recent years. They represent the thriving Israeli film industry, successfully competing in international film festivals and winning numerous awards. The 3 films of our series represent a full life cycle. The first film, Africa, was a narrative about the trials of a man facing retirement. The second film, In Between, was about young women starting to shape their identity. Tonight's film, Outdoors, Bait Bagalil in Hebrew, focuses on a middle-aged couple. While all 3 films portray the essence of Israeli life and have the sense of the landscape of Israel and its people, they also represent universal vignettes of the human condition that a diverse audience can relate to. That's what makes them so special. For our talk today, we are pleased to introduce the creator of the film, Mr. Asaf Saban. Asaf is a film director, producer, and writer. After watching the film, you might not be surprised to learn that he grew up in a small community in the Galilee, and that today he lives and creates in Tel Aviv. Asaf studied filmmaking at the Film School of Beit Berl College for the Arts. His short films have been screened at major international film festivals and received recognition and awards. Most notably, his 2007 film Mapping and his 2009 film On Leave. Outdoors, an indie project which he also produced, is his debut feature film from 2017. Currently, Asaf is working on his second feature, The Delegation, which is an Israeli-German-Polish co-production. Shalom, Asaf.
Shalom. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And for today's talk, we are pleased to have as moderator the film scholar, Dr. Avner Shavit. Avner holds a PhD from the New Sorbonne University and is a member of the research team of the Film Institute at the university. Currently, he lives in Tel Aviv, but this coming spring, he will be in Connecticut as a distinguished scholar in residence at the Center of Jewish Studies of Wesleyan University. In Israel, Avner teaches at the film department of the Haifa University. Among his courses, French cinema, cartoon movies, and Jewish representations in popular American culture. Avner is also one of the most prominent film critics in Israel and has been covering the local and international scene for the last 2 decades. He has reported on major film festivals and published interviews with leading filmmakers. Shalom, Avner. Nice to have you here.
My honor.
And before I hand the stage to you, I just want to let the audience know that you can ask questions by clicking the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and writing your questions throughout the talk. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, well, first, it's an honor and a pleasure. And I'm a huge fan of the film, but I have so many questions, so I'll just start. I do want to put things into context. The Israeli film industry is the exact opposite of Hollywood. We almost don't have private ventures, and independent filmmaking is almost non-existent. Most films are supported by governmental funds, but your film was produced independently. So first, if you could speak about the production of the film and the biggest challenges you had to face making it.
So just to say good evening and well, good afternoon for you guys in New York, and happy Hanukkah, and well, Merry Christmas soon. Very happy to be here. So to answer Avner's first question, actually this film started by chance, directly related to what Avner described about the industry structure here. I found myself basically sitting and waiting for financing, which is a very common position for fiction filmmakers. And I find myself basically stuck. I couldn't create. I had this big, ambitious project, which was supposed to be my first feature film. And I just had to create something. It almost didn't really matter what. I spent years of rewriting, sitting and waiting, and I just had to do something. And I started thinking about what is the easiest movie to make. So from very practical reasons, I was thinking that creating a film about a couple outside means exterior shootings, means not much equipment, only 2 actors. So a small crew. So for very practical reasons, I started writing a story about a couple that spending most of the time of the movie outside. This is not outdoors. This is a different story. What happened one Saturday is that my brother showed me the place where he was about to start building his house. It was like a very beautiful spot in nature in a small village in the Galilee. And while he was pointing on this bush, saying this is where the kitchen is going to be, etc., my mind drifted elsewhere. And I really felt like I knew immediately that this is what I was looking for without really knowing what this thing is. I just had like this basic idea, like a story set against the background of this construction of the house. And one basic metaphor that while the house is being built, the relationship fall apart. And I just had like this strong intuition that this is good enough. And the reason why, there's another practical reason why I couldn't really develop a full script is because the construction was about to begin. I mean, I had to act fast. I just felt the situation is rich enough to set off. I did build some kind of structure for the story. And I casted the two talented actors. Obviously, I gathered good friends, and we set off. We filmed a scene every month, something like that. Writing each scene just before, we shoot, and did the rehearsals. I mean, it became like a very long journey. Our own lives went inside the story in many ways. Maybe I will talk about it later. The film was shot over a year and a half, I would say, something like that.
How different is the film from the idea you had of it on the first day of shooting?
Well, actually, I had too many ideas at the beginning. This is could be a problem. So I had to set a framework for myself. I mean, to limit myself. I think limitations in general is it makes you creative. And so the first rule I set was to stay on location. I mean, everything happens around the house, which will gradually become another protagonist in the film. I mean, a silent one, but this is something that I set just to find my way, So, and also the episodes both document the construction, but more important, to create those kind of scenes from a marriage type of story. I mean, that the episodes will work like layers. I mean, it's like this archaeological digging of the relationship. So those are all decisions I made from very practical reasons at the beginning that became like stylistic decisions. I mean, or ideology, I can say, but I really was in kind of a survival mode of how I can make it happen. So the biggest advantage of this way of making the film was I had to write, produce, and shoot only one scene at a time. I mean, usually this is not the case. You pick some major scenes and do rehearsals, or you fine-tune them, and then you go and shoot everything, through, let's say, 3 weeks. And this process allowed me to do this kind of fine-tuning. And we also edited the film as it, went along. So it gave me some kind of perspective. And most importantly, I was obligated to work with whatever life and reality brought in. I mean, the choices my brother and his wife did for their house had to be the choices that Yara and Gili takes, like the prefab, the fact that they build like this unique type of house, at least in Israel, or the hangout place in the bushes. This is really few hundred meters away from my brother's place. So all those, facts and things from real life, I had to address them and use them. But to answer your question, I more directly, like I knew from the beginning how I want the film to end. And it gave me some kind of confidence that there's more than one way to reach this place. So this was kind of, if I took a detour, I kind of checked if I'm heading on the right track. And there were many, many changes along the way. Maybe the biggest one, or the biggest twist, was when, after I think the 3rd day of shooting, Noah Kohler, who plays Yara, told me that she needs to tell me something. And well, she told me that she just discovered she got pregnant. So that was another big major fact that I had to address in the story. I mean, it wasn't on this basic original storyline that I made. It is very much related to the story in general, or to this moment in their life. So my first reaction was kind of, I was frightened, like how I'm gonna, you know, what are we gonna do now? But it just, I cannot imagine the film without this unplanned, well, at least in my unplanned from myself as a screenwriter, this unplanned pregnancy, because for many different reasons. And, you know, the fact that Noah changes physically on camera is just, for me, a great, you know, gift, but also obviously dramatic wise.
And I was wondering if you see pregnancy and the building of a house as metaphors for making a film.
I think the territory of the story is just so rich in metaphors that I picked a different one than what you just mentioned, to kind of guide me. I can say it's like the tension between fantasy and reality, or love versus life, or everydayness. I mean, this is kind of a metaphor or tension that I was really guided by. I mean, I think I actually have never built a house myself, but from like doing a research while I was filming the film, I found that this moment in life, I mean, it's like you are being asked to draw up who you are. I mean, it's like a struggle to fit your hopes, dreams, ideals into like the physics of reality. And for me, that was the biggest metaphor, I would say, or the more interesting to kind of investigate, because of the other metaphors that obviously exist there. And I think even the fact I'm not really directly speak about, they exist, and, you know, they kind of do their jobs. So the one that just enriched me the most was this level, the fact that this moment in life, it's like a friction between like, I don't know, our life, it's like a reflection on our life. It's a moment where we need to think who we are, what do we want, what our ideals and fantasies are, and we immediately need to you know, describe it in colors, in texture. Obviously, everything comes down to money. So I found it very interesting, and that was I would say the major metaphor that I dealt with. There's other, I can maybe say that, you know, something regarding the more cinematic. There's this, I wanted to make it look or feel very lively and improvised and spontaneous, or even a bit like a documentary-like on one side, but on the other hand, to have a certain tone of staged or theatrical tone to the film. And both in the casting, I mean, the painter or the tile worker are both like real workers that worked in the house. And on the other hand, I brought, like, well, at least in Israel, famous actors and faces. And this metaphor of I can say, like a blank page or empty stage where people are sitting and they need to plan the perfect future setting or the core of their life, is again another metaphor that just intrigued me. Everything I say now, I try to hide as deep as I can in the movie. Yeah? It's not something that I directly speak about. But also, this is not something I had in mind initially to begin with, but I found a lot of things in common between making a film and building a house. But that was really during the whole process. I mean, it's this filmmaking is also something that comes to life in this friction between dreams and reality. I mean, it's a reflection on reality, and the hardship of producing a film is as much in common with building a house. And another aspect is, and this is something I also like about the human condition of people who build a house, is it's a bit tragicomic. I mean, everything becomes very crucial. I mean, what does it mean if I choose this or that? I mean, it obviously doesn't mean much, but it could mean everything at the same moment. And I think it's kind of a tragicomic, the way that like small details become suddenly, they look epic. So those are all things I try to observe, or in like just create and see how they work together.
There are many questions about the ending, but I think we should like keep them for the ending. But there's one basic question. But what is the original title of the film? And in Hebrew, the film is called A House in the Galilee. So could you speak about the Galilee, like where it is, and what is it? What is its meaning for you?
Yeah, well, it means a lot for me because I born and raised in the Galilee, so this is my kind of home scenery, I would say. But a house in the Galilee in Hebrew holds it. It's also like a metaphor. It's like a symbol for a tranquil, or some like a place which is kind of it's not necessarily vacation, but it's really a haven away from the city life and whatever. And I have to admit that the fact that I was born and raised there, but live for very long years in Tel Aviv, I kind of have I would say an ironic look on both. I mean, I'm not being how can I say it? Like, the scenery in the Galilee is not something that dazzled me. I mean, I'm aware that life there are more complex for many different reasons. But on the other hand, the city life is not something that does the same. I mean, I kind of find myself in both places and manage to look on both places a bit from a side. And this is something that I again try to use this type of point of view in the film. And yeah, the Galilee, in more specifically in the film, I think it holds a fantasy, but also it has a kind of admitting of a failure. Like, we kind of missed out the race in the city of how do we manage to fulfill ourselves professionally or creatively. And there's a sense of failure, in at least more in Gilly's mind, I would say. This is also maybe very generally on gender speaking, a more manly kind of thing. And for Yara, it holds a very different, I would say, issues as she's coming back to the place where she grew up in.
I should also mention Galilee is like a 5 hours ride from Tel Aviv. So that doesn't sound much for you in New York, but it's like a big deal for Israelis. 5 hours ride.
Maybe like upstate New York in some sense. Yeah.
There's a song I want to talk about, My Generation, but one of the reasons I love the film so much is how authentic I believe it is, and how much it is a reflection of my generation. So with its conflicts and struggles. And this film is very much Israel 2017. Um, did you intend it to be a portrait of your generation, of the Israeli middle class, or was it organic?
Luckily, I wasn't privileged to deal with those big issues. I say privileged because I think it's a risk if you're trying to talk about issues in general. I was so much into the characters, and I was in a mode of just going through each scene at a time, that I had almost no perspective of those issues. I can say that the film was made in a very specific time in my life and everyone else is involved. And I think the fact that it was a very impulsive kind of creative process, it made it a bit, there's this cliche, which not cliche, but saying, which I think is very right, that the most personal is also the most universal. So I became a father during the shooting. There was a big baby boom. I mean, Noah's pregnancy was on camera, but actually all the people involved became parents during the period of the shooting. Like the first one was the line producer, and then was me, and then the DP, the photographer, then Noah on camera. I mean, not obviously giving birth on camera, and then just a moment after we finished the shoot, like Udi Zratzin, the main lead actor, wife, had a baby. And during the whole process of rehearsing and while I was writing the scene, it became like this group therapy. I mean, we all brought our own life in, and scenes were changed by stories that we all gathered. So in that sense, again, not intentionally, it I guess reflected on a certain moment in certain people's life.
I just want to say that this baby boom you're speaking about is very Israeli. Like everyone has kids, and normally 2 or 3 children. Even hipsters and artists. Like I was born in 1983. Most of my friends, not only they have a family, but they have 2 or 3 children.
Yeah. Because it serves the nation, it's ideology. It's like there's also like a talk with this childhood friend who comes back from New York, and this I know. I can tell you that I feel that I belong to a generation who were privileged not to deal with building a family, choosing necessarily work that pays the bills and everything. We kind of postponed the dealing with the hard questions of life. This is, well, specifically my experience and the people I live among. And I still think that, as you said about the whole issue of having children in Israel, it's also, there's like this constant survival mode in Israel. I learned from traveling with this film abroad that the dream of having your own house is not necessarily an international dream. I mean, it's very Israeli. And I think that in a way, it has something to do with this notion of a survival mode, or there's always a war outside. I mean, it's kind of, you try to build your own shelter from the war that exists outside. Yeah.
you were speaking about therapy, and there are two questions from the audience concerning the therapy. So I'll ask them both. Johan, he asks, why did the I'll ask them both, right? Then you can answer, please.
Okay.
First, why did the couple have to take a test before they could build a house? And there's also a question by Uri Klein, I guess not the film critic, the Israeli film critic. Yeah. It says, Avner Asaf, great to see you. Why did you choose to add the Vadat Kabbalah, the acceptance committee, to the film? It could have evolved into another part of the plot, but you left it as a minimal element. So if you can answer those two questions, I think they're related.
They're very much related, and I can tell you in general, this is something very much unique to Israel. I mean, there are closed-gated communities in other places around the world, but those acceptance committees are very much, this is like, has to do with the basic issues of Israel, who is trying to kind of, I would say, merge being a Jewish state and a democratic state. It's a long, I don't want to get into the whole details. For Israelis, these nuances mean a lot. And this is actually a way, I would say, legal way for those closed-gated communities to keep themselves homogenic, I would say. And this is actually, this scene is based on experience of a very good friend of mine, who was those SATs or those tests, they need to go through them. And this is, again, this is something that really represents a unique aspect of this type of communities in Israel. For me, I lived in such a place. And when I live actually in Yafo, in Jaffa, not in Tel Aviv, and I came to meet and become friends with Arab neighbors just 2 weeks ago in a playground with my son. I started speaking to a guy who lived like 20 minutes drive from my parents' place where I grew up. And we both, the chances we could meet and speak and become friends there are very little. And the reason why I didn't want to put too much emphasis on that is because this is not what the film is about. But I try to plant those seeds, I would say. It's not like a quiz, but this is something that someone who lives in a city and let's say in a very liberal state of mind and decides to move into such a community, he needs to deal with that fact. And this is what I said before about the fact that when I'm going to the Galilee, which I love a lot, I don't just see the beautiful scenery. I see the complexity of living there. Did I answer the question?
There are a lot of more questions from the audience. I'll get back to that. I promise. We have 40 minutes, so we're fine. I just want to like ask my question. Another thing that I love about the film is that it's like always interesting, even when there's a dialogue with the security inspector, like that sounds boring, but you make it interesting. So how did you do that? Was it improvised or not? And why was it important for you to include dialogues with the security inspector and the painter? Do you find them inherently interesting, those moments of life?
I can tell you, well, there's very little improvised dialogue in general. I mean, it's mostly scripted. I was privileged to know the actors and get to know them very well as we went along. So sometimes you write and you don't know who's gonna say the dialogue. And in that, I mean, in that case, I could imagine, I'm not talking about, let's say, the painter, but obviously about the two lead characters, I could imagine how Noah is gonna say those lines, or Udi is gonna say his, and it helped me a lot to fine tune the dialogue. And as I said before, I wanted it to look and sound almost documentary and spontaneous. And we put a lot of effort and time to make it look improvised. But this is a more, not technical, but this is, there's a more, I would say, fundamental part to that. In general, I'm interested in how should I say it? Like, find poetic moments in everydayness, and like I think there's again this is one of the most powerful aspects of cinema, that you enter a room, the lights go off, and it is let's say, like, opportunity to look on life from a side. It's like a reflection on life. And I think, again, in more related to the film, to the story, because the situation is a couple that is on a journey to fulfill his fantasy and to make his dream come true. I think that my way to tell the story was to kind of tie weights to their feet with the everydayness. I mean, this is something they need to carry on their way, or while they're trying to keep their head up high in the sky. So the everydayness in this film was kind of a tool for me to find drama without creating big dramatic moments, let's say. To look for drama in the nuances.
I just have one more question, which, like, I find almost essential. The casting. So another context is that Noa Queer is now considered Israel's finest actress, but at the time she was not that well known. Udi, who plays her husband, his performance was very much acclaimed as well, and he was not well known when you cast him. So could you speak about the casting and then working with both Noah and Udi?
Yeah, Noah is a long-time friend of mine. Actually, her husband is a childhood friend of mine from the Galilee. So when I said earlier about this other story of a couple outside that I had in mind, so Noah was in my mind. I also kind of told her about this story before I came across the location of Outdoors. So I just love her and you know, her talent and everything. And Udi was a match. I mean, I was looking how to match Noah with someone who will, let's say, the matching would do them both good. And I feel that what Udi brought with him, his sensitivity and this combination of some roughness with delicacy, and the fact that he's a really good listener, which is, I feel, is one of the most important qualities of an actor or actress. And I also, before speaking about Noah, I also think, again, that the fact that we were on such a long journey, they managed to build intimacy between them. And when you create a made-up story about a couple or a fictional relationship, intimacy is the most important thing. I mean, it's something that you cannot really engineer. I mean, it's a matter of chemistry. And if this chemistry exists and you have, again, the space and time to make it evolve, then interesting things can happen. And speaking of Noah, she's really special. I mean, I think that her qualities of bringing herself in front of the camera or the ability to be in the moment, which is something very elusive. I don't know if you can teach that. I mean, this is when me as a director should not interfere or almost just document what is happening. And I think that the courage and yeah, she's not afraid, both practically speaking in this specific production. We had no idea where we're heading. I couldn't give them a full script. We didn't know when it's going to end. And this was, especially after she became pregnant, it was a very hard production to, you know, to follow. So this is one aspect of being courage or total artist or whatever you want to call it. But I'm talking more of being not afraid to be exposed emotionally. And this is, I think, again, a very rare quality. And also being very generous. I think she's a great partner for other actors. Yeah, I can give maybe, I don't know, like I can give an example. She's also, there's like, I like actors when they don't get everything for granted. Like that they, if they don't understand something, they would fight to understand. And also, like, if she's so accurate and truthful that when she's off, I could very easily see it. And I can give an example of, like, actually this example of a scene, I would say two things about it. The moment, the fighting that they have outside the house just before, well, it's kind of just after fighting when they are outside the door. This scene was originally much earlier in the script, well, in the structure of the story. Let's say partly because I was always afraid that the drama might evolve too slowly. And like I had this kind of feeling that I need to bring in drama earlier than maybe my intuitions. And this fighting scene was originally much earlier. And we already had a date of shooting and we did a rehearsal. And Noah was really fighting with me that she doesn't understand why Yara is saying those things and why, I mean, something felt wrong. And I went back and I just realized it's not the right moment for this scene. And I postponed, it was a few days before we were supposed to shoot this scene. And eventually, when it got to the right place, just before the end, we came there. When we got there, I mean, we all felt like we felt that we know the characters well enough, and we all felt that this scene is in the right spot, and we fine-tuned it on rehearsals. And then we did the first take on Noah, and it wasn't that good, and we spoke about it, and then we had a click on what was necessary. And she told me, like, okay, now I understand. I can give you only one take. Tell me everything you want now, and I'll try and do my best. And well, for me, it was the only time being on set that after I said cut, there was like silent. And then the crew started applauding. Like, we were a very little crew and we were all very much on this emotional journey together. I mean, we felt like this deep partnership. And it was very powerful to see that. And funny enough, Udi was next. And for him, it was really hard. It was like, how can I fight with that? I mean, we had to stop and build his case in the sense that for me, I always try to make them both equally right, in the sense that I'm not interested in finding who's right and who's wrong. So I try to look on every scene from his perspective and point of view and hers. And because her performance was so powerful, we had to rebuild his case just before he's going on camera in order to live up to it. And I think he did an amazing job.
Okay, now let's try to squeeze in a dozen questions in half an hour. I think we can do it.
I'll try to stick to short answers from now
on. Well, some of the questions are quite long. Jonathan Morris, first, congratulations on a wonderful film. How much were you thinking about how the settlements in the Galilee have changed so much across the past 2 decades and are so different from when we grew up? Do you think the characters are chasing some misguided notion of nostalgia or trying to recapture something that can't be recaptured?
Oh, this is a very private question. I mean, in the sense, not that I'm holding secrets. I mean, this is not, I don't think it's socially, I really don't have a good answer. I can say, and it has something to do with what I said before, that it's like a deal. This is something that they mentioned. It's the situation in Israel, and it's not only relevant for 2017. It's also like for now and years before, is that this whole notion of being constantly on a survival war is that if you have the chance to settle down, then you'll grab it, even if it doesn't necessarily fit perfectly into, again, yourself as you see it at that moment. And those places, they offer very good bargains for people who grew up there. Some of my friends came back partly because this was their only option to settle down, to have a place of their own. So there was some kind of tax in other areas which they had to pay. So again, it is related to that, well, issues of living in Israel.
Faye asks, when Yara goes to look at her childhood home, why did you have her lie about why she was there and pretend she was looking for ideas for her house instead of just saying she wanted to look at where she grew up?
Why did I make her lie? I think we all lie all the time, especially with deep like feelings, and I think human emotions, the complex and deepest human emotions are the ones we are put the most time and energy in repressing them and hiding them. So for me, I mean, the fact that I'm more interested in the mechanism of how you don't say what is not what is the most painful or hard for you to express. So I'm much more interested in why you don't say, because I think again, this is like a contradiction that exists in humans, and if you show the concealment or repression, you do not eliminate the emotion or the feeling, but you just show how complex or truthful it is. It also exists in other relationships in the movie.
There are two questions concerning the same scene, the pothouse scene. First, David asks, do folks really smoke that much weed over there? That I can answer, yes. Is it considered pretty much a non-crime at this point? How deliberate and essential was the depiction of smoking marijuana to setting the tone and moving the plot along? And an anonymous attendee asks, the scene in the pothouse seems to have been crucial in Gilly's self-discovery, but I did not understand what did he learn from being kissed by one of the actresses a generation younger than him. What did he learn and how did it play in the blow-up scenes that followed?
Okay, I don't really what is the first question regarding the whole pot, like generally speaking?
Well,
they do smoke a lot there.
First, how common is
it's common. It's
no, but the more essential question is how essential was depiction of the weed smoking to setting the tone and moving the plot along.
I want to say something that might hopefully answer both questions. I think Gilly still hope. I mean, he, as I said before, there's a sense of failure in his move to the Galilee, but he still has this fantasy of being enlightened on the top of the mountain and getting his, creativity into, whatever he couldn't in the city. And when he sees this place, his libido, his childish, creative, whatever you want to call it, part of his identity is kind of coming to life. And the scene with the girl, it brings that notion to the extreme, because she makes him feel old and pathetic, and he goes and hide in this shelter part of the house, which is again something very Israeli that everybody is obligated to build, which will become his place of where he would walk. So this the scene with the girl is just I feel a bit embarrassed to interpret myself too much, but it kind of brings Gilly into this this moment of life of understanding there's a kind of a gap between the way he sees himself and maybe who he is really, is.
I want to ask. I want to add a question. I think, I see the film as being very French, maybe because I'm French, but I think that the filmmaking style, the cinematography, the improvised screenplay, working with a cast which is almost like your family, dealing with notions of romance and love. I see that as being very French. So it's a very Israeli film, but I think I see it as being very much inspired by the French New Wave. Was that an inspiration? And if not, what were your inspirations making this film?
It wasn't really a direct inspiration, I have to admit. I can say that maybe the major inspiration, I watched a lot of films about relationship and couples during the making, but there's like Scenes of a Marriage by Ingmar Bergman, which is like it became like a Bible for every kind of drama, related to relationship, and rightly so. I mean, it's very deep. It's actually now I think HBO is doing an American remake of it.
With an Israeli director.
Yeah, with Hagai Levi. There's a book, a transcript of that originally TV series, later on edited as a movie, and I really find it so refreshing. But then again, the last thing I wanted was to make it look and feel like North European couple. Yeah, they are not Swedish at all. And this was a big inspiration in, I would say, dramatic structure or just notions of, but also there's John Cassavetes, which is always an inspiration, and I really watched many movies just to get inspired. Not all of them good. Sometimes it works better to learn from others people so-called mistakes, whatever, or just to describe what is not working for you. Another great film, just the title, Everyone Else by Marian Ade, a German film, which is brilliant about a young couple. It was a great inspiration as well. But movies, you know, I don't have that good memory to films. So I think they all sync somewhere and then, you know, show up without me acknowledging it. So I guess there's more inspiration I'm not fully aware of.
There are two more questions I think I can try and put together. First, was the building of the new home the main reason for the difficulties, or were there other underlying issues that caused the problems? And why was the choice of floor tiles such an important process or focus? Why does it take so much time in the film? Does it reflect some reality?
Well, to answer the second question, I think from speaking to many couples that built a house, and few of them actually didn't survive the process, every couple has their own issue with a different element in the house. I spoke with a friend who I didn't know had she was married when she was young and started building maybe too early with her then husband a house in the kibbutz where she grew up. And she decided to, well, get divorced because of the tiles. What started from a tile argument. So in that sense, it's really, you know, kind of an excuse for me, because I think Yara, she knows that it's stupid in the sense that it's not as crucial as she feels like at the same moment. I think part of the anger or energy towards, or the feeling lonely when you know, Gili leave her with dealing with that, is the fact that she knows it's pathetic and it's not as important as it might, but it becomes like everything in that moment, because she cannot make a decision. And I think this is something very human, and I like the irony. I mean, I'm really sympathizing her, or I try to not to look cynically on her condition, but I do agree that it doesn't mean much. I mean, it's, yeah. And the first question I actually forgot.
No, the question was if that's like the main reason for the difficulties, or other more.
You mean the house? I think it's just like a, how do you call it? Like a catalyst. It just makes deeper issues come up. I mean, show up. I think this is when they discover things. This is what I try to create, this kind of layers that are being exposed. And I mean, I spoke about it earlier from the more structural point of view of the episodes, but I wanted to create this kind of, as I said, archaeological digging of the relationship, that the emotions and the characters are, you know, the emotion are being uncovered or exposed, but not only to the viewers, but also to the characters themselves on camera. I mean, they learned about themselves, they learn about their partners, about their parents through the building of the house.
We have 10 more minutes, so I'll ask one more question, and then we'll end it with 2 or 3 more questions from the audience. So I just want to end with one more layer I loved in the film, that it's so subtle, and you never say, this is my ex-boyfriend, this is my nemesis. We just understand everything by facial expressions and gestures. So how did you work on that, on like not saying anything but saying everything at the same time?
This is the hardest part for me. I mean, I always try not to say words. I mean, I think subtext, I'm trying to give subtext the respect it deserves. And in this specific case, I think the settings, the backdrop is so rich in tension, symbols, drama, that it allowed me to speak more silently. I mean, it let I as a viewer, as a spectator, I don't like to be spoon-fed. I mean, I don't like when someone tries to educate me or to tell me what I should think or how I should feel. And I'm trying to create this open space for the viewer as well. I mean, emotionally space, and not to tell them what they should think or feel, because I don't think my feelings or ideas are any better than theirs. So I can say that it's almost as if I'm trying to create drama in the most minor possible way. I mean, how little can I make in order to create tension so it's like physically, if you enter a room and people are speaking very silently, or something in your hearing can get very focused. And then little vibrance can maybe get bigger meaning. It needs maybe some patience. I mean, I think that we are used to getting more instant, kind of feelings more easier today. And for me, if you get on this, if I manage to create this tone or rhythm, and someone gets on it, it allows you to get this reflection on life, this little nuances that film could be a very generous medium. And for me, this is where this generosity could exist.
Yeah, before we interpret the ending, 2 more, I think, very short, simple questions. One, why is the film called Outdoors in English? Was that your choice? And is there any significance to the fact the couple was not married?
Well, I struggled a lot with the English title. I have to admit, it doesn't hold the same, context or symbols that the Hebrew title does. I wanted, in a way, to go back to the very direct, the fact this, it's actually being mentioned in the fighting scene when she told, when Yara tells Gili, are you inside or outside? I mean, do you sit outside the house and look at us, or you need to choose? And for me, outdoors can hold that meaning of being out the door and having this sense of nature and life in the full, free spirit of its potential. And I think that this, I tried to look at that couple both from outside and from the inside. And I can say something very shortly, not technically, but the camera was positioned always outside the house. And we looked on the couple through the either windows or doors. That's how they were framed. And it's not directly related to not the best English title of the film, but that's something that I felt best described that notion. Yeah.
And there was a question about the fact that they're not married, the couple.
Yeah, I live with the same woman for 16 years, not married. And there's, some of my good friends, this is what I know. Yeah, I try to put some,
Okay. Now we have like 8 more minutes. I just want to I want to quote all the comments and questions concerning the ending. I think it's beautiful. So bear with me for like a minute. And wait, Asaf, before you answer, I'll just
okay.
Ashira, how did you do the last shot when the camera goes out through the window? Marilyn, no. So that's one question about the ending. Another question concerning the ending. Robert, how did you decide on the ending of the movie? And there are more. John, I enjoyed the film, but I'm very confused about the ending. Did they move into the house or rent it? Kathy, because of the subtitles, the very end was a little confusing. Am I correct in feeling that the original couple was moving out and another family was going to move in? VG, it's not clear to me regarding the final scene. Once the house is built and is being furnished, is this the neighbor or the main character's house? Bucha, can you talk about the ending of the movie? Jan, not speaking Hebrew, I felt I missed out on what the ending actually was. Anonymous attendee, please don't forget to explain the ending. Sarah, wonderful film. I would like to hear about the end. It felt quick, sudden, and vague. Did I miss something? Suzanne, why did they give up the house at the end? Irene, please explain the ending. What happened? There seemed to be no preparation for it, and it was confusing as to where Gilly and Noah were going.
I think I got the general point. Okay.
Shoshana, why did they leave the house at the end? And Shirley, James, what about the ending? And Shirley, are we to interpret the ending as the dream of the house ended? Are they going back to Tel Aviv? What does it mean that they're subletting the house and not outright selling it? I'm done.
So yeah, as I said before, I knew from the beginning how or where I want them to end, or the film to end. Actually, they are not done. I wanted to bring them into a stage where they need to pick between the physical house and the partnership or the relationship. I mean, I wanted to bring them into a stage where even you can say the walls were filled up with things that they cannot deal with at the moment. And this is more literally speaking about the fact that I think they choose they choose the better option, in the sense that I cannot say that they never got back to the house. This is just a moment where they gone through, I would say, a productive process in the relationship, and they realized that living in that physical place at the moment is not right for them in order to keep on living together. And as I said before, I tried to take them through the bureaucracy of everyday life. And for me, I wanted to bring kind of the fantasy back in, after we got deeper and deeper into the most little details of bureaucracy and reality. But most importantly, I wanted to create an open ending and some irony, and to create this bittersweet ending, because I think this is life, and I can accept the fact or the option that after a week. By the way, just more directly, they just went traveling and they did rent the place to another couple. So this is what they did if someone missed out that. But the fact that let's say they gone to India, and after a week or 2 weeks of having the best time, they got back into little arguments of a couple is something that I like, because this is part of the endless, never-ending tango of being a couple, because it holds a paradox where it's like a constant fighting of staying together. I mean, you can't live with and you can't live without. So for me, I wanted to keep them dancing.
Okay, I think it was intense, thorough, and insightful. I mean, the conversation. Thank you all for your comments and your questions. Thank you, Asaf, for this wonderful film, unforgettable film. And thank you for your answers.
And this is when Ilona went back online to thank her and Kirsten and Daniel for hosting us. It was a great pleasure. And yeah, so happy Hanukkah. And
Thank you. Thank you, Asaf and Avner, for this fascinating conversation. Asaf, I'm looking forward to your next film, Delegation. When is this coming out?
We are now casting the film. There's a little issue with this virus. I don't know if you heard about it. It's kind of changed plans to many people across the globe, so me included. But yeah, it's kind of a happy ending, because this project that I was stuck with, it comes to life now, and I'm very excited. And yeah, I can't tell for sure because of obvious reasons, but it's soon.
Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you, our dear audience, for being here. This was the last film of the Fall 2020 series. We look forward to spring semester, when we anticipate to offer a new exciting series, and we will keep you posted. So happy holidays to everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Hanukkah.
Bye-bye.